The laughter hit Ethan like a slap across the face as he stood alone near the buffet table at the Thompson family reunion party. His cousin's jokes about his eternal bachelor status echoing through the brightly lit banquet hall in suburban Chicago. Still no ring on that finger? Ethan, at 28 you should have a wife and kids by now. What's the holdup? Afraid of commitment. Uncle Frank boomed with a belly laugh that made the whole table join in, glasses clinking in mock sympathy, while Aunt Linda patted his shoulder like he was some pitiful stray. Ethan forced a tight smile, his stomach twisting into knots under the weight of their stares, the festive string lights and floral centerpieces suddenly feeling like spotlights exposing every hidden corner of his life. The annual Thompson reunion had always been like this. A sprawling event in the rented Oak Grove Hall with over 100 relatives from across Illinois, loud stories, endless questions, and the subtle pressure to fit the mold of the perfect American family man. He had driven in from his downtown apartment that morning telling himself it would be fine, that he could handle one more night of playing the role he'd perfected since moving to the city 5 years ago after that disastrous coming-out attempt with his parents back in Peoria. They had nodded politely, then changed the subject forever, and Ethan had learned to keep his truth locked away to preserve the fragile peace. Now, surrounded by aunts who wanted grandkids and cousins who bragged about their own weddings, he felt the old shame creeping back. His marketing job at a top Chicago firm kept him busy, gave him excuses, but it couldn't shield him here. Maybe he's just hicky, Cousin Sarah teased, winking at her husband as if Ethan couldn't hear, or waiting for the right girl to sweep him off his feet. The group erupted again, and Ethan laughed along, because what else could he do? Inside, his mind raced to Marcus, his boyfriend of nearly 3 years, the high school history teacher with the warm hazel eyes and quiet strength who made every secret weekend feel like freedom. They had met at a crowded coffee shop near Lincoln Park when Ethan's laptop died during a deadline. Marcus had offered his charger with a smile that lit up the whole place. Their first date had been a simple walk along the lake, talking about everything from favorite books to childhood dreams, and Ethan had fallen hard, finally allowing himself to believe he deserved this kind of love. But family gatherings like this one always pulled him back into the closet he thought he'd escaped. He had almost invited Marcus tonight, even texted him the address last week, but then deleted it in a panic, afraid of the fallout. As the teasing intensified, Ethan glanced toward the grand double doors at the far end of the hall, wondering if he should just slip out early and call Marcus later for the comfort he craved. The jazz quartet in the corner played on, oblivious, while plates of pot roast and mashed potatoes circulated. Seriously, Ethan, you're the only single guy left in our generation, his cousin Tyler added, clapping him on the back a little too hard. Time to man up and settle down. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it, his cheeks burning hotter. He had built a life he was proud of, promotions, a cozy apartment, friends who knew the real him. But here, among the people who were supposed to love him unconditionally, he felt smaller than ever. The laughter swelled again, and for a split second, he wondered if keeping Marcus hidden was worth this constant ache. Little did he know, the universe was about to answer that question in the most dramatic way possible. His heart pounded as he reached for a glass of punch, trying to steady himself, the weight of years of silence pressing down harder than the summer humidity outside. Ethan's mind drifted briefly to the last time he'd tried to hint at the truth with his sister, Mia, during a quiet lunch last Christmas. She had listened with wide eyes, but then changed the subject to her kids, leaving him even more isolated. Now, surrounded by the same familiar faces that had celebrated his high school graduation and college degree, he realized how much energy it took to maintain the facade. The hall smelled of fresh flowers and home-cooked casseroles, laughter bouncing off the high ceilings, but to Ethan it felt like a cage. He excused himself to the restroom to catch his breath, splashing water on his face and staring at his reflection. Handsome, successful, and utterly alone in this moment. When he returned, the group had moved on to another target, but the sting lingered. He grabbed a plate and tried to blend in, nodding at stories he barely heard. The evening stretched on, and with each passing minute, the pressure built until he felt he might crack. Just as Ethan was about to suggest a group photo to escape the conversation, the double doors at the entrance swung open with a soft creak that somehow cut through the noise. Heads turned, conversations paused, and there stood Marcus, tall, confident, wearing a crisp blue button-up that hugged his athletic frame, his kind hazel eyes scanning the room until they locked onto Ethan's with that familiar warmth that always made everything else fade. The air shifted instantly, the mocking laughter dying in throats as relatives exchanged confused glances. Marcus stepped inside without hesitation, a small bouquet of wildflowers in hand, the kind Ethan loved from their weekend hikes, and walked straight toward him as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "Sorry I'm late, love," Marcus said clearly, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, pulling Ethan into a gentle embrace that felt like coming home after a storm. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs, shock and relief flooding through him in equal measure. He had never planned for this, had begged Marcus in their last call to wait until he was ready. But here he was, turning the entire room's energy on its head with nothing more than his presence and that steady smile. Whispers rippled through the hall like a wave. Uncle Frank's mouth hung open mid-joke. Aunt Linda's hand froze on her wine glass, and Cousin Sarah's eyes widened in realization. "Wait, Ethan? This is—" someone murmured, but Marcus didn't flinch. He shook hands with the closest relatives, introducing himself as Marcus Bennett, Ethan's partner, with the same calm assurance he used in his classroom. Ethan stood there, frozen for a heartbeat, then squeezed Marcus's hand back, feeling the years of hiding begin to crack under the bright lights. The jazz quartet kept playing, but the atmosphere had transformed, mockery giving way to stunned silence, then tentative smiles from a few younger cousins who seemed genuinely curious rather than judgmental. Mia appeared from across the room, her face a mix of surprise and something like pride, pulling Ethan aside for a quick hug while Marcus charmed the older aunts with stories about teaching history to rowdy teenagers. As the evening continued, conversations shifted from Ethan's single status to questions about how they met, how long they'd been together, and what Marcus did for a living. Ethan watched in awe as his boyfriend navigated the minefield with grace, deflecting awkward comments with humor and never letting go of his hand. Inside, Ethan's mind raced through a whirlwind of emotions. Fear that this would shatter his family ties forever, gratitude for Marcus's courage, and a growing sense of liberation he hadn't felt since their first kiss under the stars at Millennium Park. He remembered the early days when Marcus had patiently waited through Ethan's hesitations, never pushing but always reminding him that love like theirs was worth the risk. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," Marcus whispered during a quiet moment by the dessert table, his thumb tracing circles on Ethan's palm. The words anchored him, pushing back the panic that threatened to rise. Some relatives recovered quickly, offering polite nods and even compliments on how good they looked together, while others exchanged uneasy glances and busied themselves with plates. Tyler, the cousin who had teased the hardest earlier, approached with an awkward apology, mumbling something about not knowing. Ethan accepted it with a nod, but the real test would come later when the initial shock wore off. For now, the party continued with a new undercurrent, curiosity replacing ridicule, respect slowly building as Marcus shared funny anecdotes about their road trips and quiet evenings cooking together. Ethan felt seen in a way he never had at these events, the weight on his chest lifting just enough to breathe freely. As the night deepened, he stole glances at Marcus, marveling at how one bold entrance had rewritten the script of the evening. Yet deep down, he knew the real conversations and the real consequences were only beginning once the hall lights dimmed and the family scattered back to their lives. The drive home later that night was quiet at first, Marcus behind the wheel of Ethan's car since he'd taken an Uber to the surprise. "You okay?" Marcus asked softly, one hand resting on Ethan's knee. Ethan nodded, but his mind replayed every look, every whisper. He had spent so long protecting this relationship from the very people who were supposed to celebrate it, and now the door was open, whether he was ready or not. Marcus's arrival had changed everything in an instant, turning ridicule into a platform for truth, but Ethan wondered how long the warmth would last before old prejudices resurfaced. Still, holding Marcus's hand as they pulled onto the highway toward the city lights, he felt a spark of hope he hadn't dared to nurture before. The journey ahead would test them both, but for the first time, Ethan wasn't facing it alone. The morning after the reunion brought a flood of text messages that Ethan scrolled through over coffee in their Lincoln Park apartment, Marcus still asleep beside him. Some were supportive, younger cousins asking for details, Mia sending heart emojis and a promise to call soon. Others were polite but distant, like Aunt Linda's vague, "It was nice to meet your friend." Uncle Frank hadn't texted at all, and that silence stung more than any joke. Ethan set his phone down, staring out the window at the bustling street below, the weight of the previous night settling differently now that the adrenaline had faded. Marcus stirred, wrapping an arm around him with a sleepy smile. "Regrets?" he asked gently, and Ethan shook his head, though doubt lingered. Their relationship had always been his safe harbor. Lazy Sundays with books and takeout, passionate discussions about politics and dreams. But integrating it into the family world felt like stepping on a thin ice. At work Monday, the story somehow leaked through a distant relative who worked in the same building, turning casual hallway chats into loaded questions. "Heard you had quite the family event," a colleague teased lightly, but Ethan sensed the undercurrent of curiosity mixed with something less kind. He brushed it off, focusing on his latest campaign pitch, but the internal storm raged. Flashbacks hit him during meetings. The way his parents had reacted years ago when he first tried to come out, the careful distance they'd maintained ever since, sending birthday cards but never asking about his personal life. Marcus had been his anchor through all of it, encouraging therapy and open conversations. But now Ethan questioned if his boldness had been fair to either of them. By lunch, he confided in his closest work friend, Lena, who listened without judgment and shared her own coming-out story from years earlier. Her words helped, but the fear of professional repercussions gnawed at him. Subtle shifts in team dynamics, missed opportunities he might never prove were related. That evening, a call from his mother changed the tone entirely. "Ethan, honey, we heard from your aunt," she started, her voice tight with the same careful politeness from years past. The conversation stretched into painful territory. Questions about why he hadn't told them sooner, concerns about the lifestyle, and quiet disappointment that echoed old wounds. Ethan defended Marcus fiercely, describing his kindness and stability, but the call ended on an uneasy note with promises to visit soon that felt hollow. Marcus listened patiently afterward, holding him through the tears Ethan rarely allowed himself. "This is the hard part," Marcus said, "but we're in it together." Their love had always been built on quiet strength. Shared hikes in the Dells, volunteering at local shelters, late-night talks about the future. But now it faced its biggest test. Ethan realized how much he had sacrificed by hiding, how his fear had limited not just him, but the man he loved. As the week progressed, small cracks appeared in his carefully constructed world. A work email hinted at a promotion that suddenly felt uncertain, and a cousin posted a vague social media comment that sparked more family group chat speculation. Marcus suggested a quiet weekend away to process, and they drove to a cabin up north, where the pine-scented air and crackling fireplace allowed real talk. Ethan opened up about the identity crisis that had haunted him since college, the pull between the son his family wanted and the man he truly was. Marcus shared his own journey, coming out in high school and losing a few friends but gaining a community that lifted him. Their bond deepened in those conversations, turning the reunion's chaos into a catalyst for growth. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the sense that more confrontations loomed, that one entrance had only begun the real work of bridging worlds. By Sunday night, back in the city, he felt stronger but still raw, the journey of acceptance stretching far beyond a single-party moment. Months passed in a blur of cautious family texts and steady work routines, but the undercurrents from the reunion refused to settle. Ethan found himself navigating a new normal, inviting Marcus to smaller gatherings with Mia and her kids, where acceptance grew slowly like spring buds. His sister became an unexpected ally, defending them during awkward holiday calls, and even hosting a low-key dinner where their parents met Marcus for the first time. The meeting was polite but strained, filled with surface-level questions about teaching and marketing, yet no outright rejection. Ethan watched Marcus charm them with stories of his students, seeing glimmers of possibility where once there had been only walls. Still, the emotional toll showed in quiet moments. Late nights when Ethan questioned if his choices were selfish, or mornings when old doubts resurfaced about whether love could truly heal generational gaps. At the office, the whispers faded but left subtle marks. A missed invite to an after-work event, a project reassigned with a vague excuse. Lena proved invaluable, sharing resources on workplace inclusivity and encouraging Ethan to join the company's emerging LGBTQ+ employee group. Through it all, Marcus remained his rock, planning surprise picnics in Grant Park and reminding him that growth often looked messy. Their relationship evolved too, moving from secret weekends to open weekends with friends who celebrated them openly. Ethan began volunteering at a local youth center with Marcus, mentoring teens struggling with their own identities, and the work filled a void he hadn't realized existed. It was during one such session that he had his first real breakthrough, listening to a young boy describe his fear of family rejection and realizing how far he had come. Yet betrayal lurked in unexpected places. A cousin who had seemed supportive at the reunion began spreading rumors back home, twisting details into something ugly that reached Ethan's parents and caused a heated phone argument one rainy Tuesday. "How could you embarrass us like this?" his father demanded, the words cutting deep. Ethan hung up shaking, Marcus pulling him close without a word. The crisis forced a choice: retreat back into hiding or fight for the life they deserved. They spent hours talking through options, therapy together, a family mediation session, even the possibility of limited contact, if needed. Ethan confronted the cousin directly via a long message, laying out the hurt without anger, and surprisingly received an apology weeks later. The process taught him about forgiveness and boundaries, lessons that strengthened his resolve. Through the ups and downs, Ethan's personal growth became evident. He started journaling his thoughts, something Marcus had gently suggested, and found clarity in writing about the boy who once felt broken and the man who now stood taller. Their love story wasn't just romance. It was partnership in the truest sense, sharing burdens, celebrating small victories like a positive work review or a warm text from Mia. As autumn leaves fell across Chicago, Ethan realized the reunion hadn't been an ending but a beginning, each challenge carving space for authenticity. The sacrifices, strained family ties, professional caution, were real, but so were the rewards. Deeper connection with Marcus, new friendships in the community, and a version of himself unburdened by secrets. Winter brought its own tests when Ethan's company announced a major restructuring that placed his promotion on hold amid rumors of bias. The timing felt cruel, coinciding with a planned family visit where old tensions resurfaced during a tense dinner. Marcus suggested pausing the trip, but Ethan insisted on facing it, leading to their first real argument. Not shouting, but quiet hurt over differing views on timing and protection. "I can't keep shielding you from everything," Marcus said one night, his voice heavy with exhaustion after a long day. The words lingered, forcing Ethan to examine his patterns of self-sabotage and the ways fear still controlled parts of his life. They reconciled with honest talks over hot chocolate, recommitting to communication as their foundation. The family visit tested every boundary. His parents tried, asking careful questions about Marcus's job and hobbies, but underlying discomfort showed in sidelong glances and changed subjects. Ethan shared stories of their life together, hoping to humanize their bond, while Marcus listened supportively from the sidelines. A breakthrough came when his mother admitted her own fears stemmed from worry rather than hate, opening a door to tentative understanding. Yet the visit ended with unresolved questions, leaving Ethan drained but determined. Back home, he channeled the energy into advocacy, joining a panel at work on diversity and speaking briefly about his journey without naming names. The response was overwhelmingly positive, shifting office dynamics in subtle but meaningful ways. Through it all, moments of pure joy reminded them why they fought. A spontaneous trip to New York for Marcus's birthday, where they walked hand in hand without glancing over their shoulders, or quiet evenings planning a future apartment with room for a dog. These anchors kept Ethan grounded when doubt crept in. The low point came when an old high school friend from Peoria reached out with a concerned message echoing family gossip, forcing another layer of confrontation. Ethan responded with vulnerability, sharing his truth and inviting dialogue, which surprisingly led to reconnection rather than loss. Each step reinforced that authenticity, while painful, built resilience he never knew he possessed. Marcus's unwavering support, through hugs, shared silences, and gentle encouragement, became the thread weaving their lives tighter. As spring approached, Ethan stood at a crossroads, weighing a job offer from a more inclusive firm against staying to push change where he was. Marcus supported whatever he chose, their partnership now a model of mutual growth. The sacrifices had been steep, lost connections, sleepless nights, but the awakening felt profound, a shift from survival to thriving. Summer arrived with a sense of renewal as Ethan accepted the new role at a forward-thinking agency, where his voice on inclusion was welcome from day one. The move brought fresh energy, allowing him and Marcus to host their first joint family gathering. A small backyard barbecue with Mia's kids splashing in a borrowed pool, and even his parents attending with cautious warmth. Conversations flowed easier now, laughter genuine rather than forced, as stories of their life together wove into the family tapestry. Uncle Frank sent a belated card with a handwritten note of acceptance that meant more than words could express. Ethan marveled at how far they had come from that humiliating reunion night, each challenge forging a stronger version of himself and their love. Marcus proposed quietly one evening on their favorite lakefront bench. No grand gestures needed after everything they'd endured, just a simple ring and the promise of forever. Ethan said yes through tears, the moment sealing years of growth into a future they had earned. Their wedding planning became a celebration of chosen and blood family alike, blending traditions with the authenticity they had fought for. Ethan continued mentoring youth, sharing pieces of his story to light paths for others, while Marcus thrived in the classroom, their lives intertwined in purpose and joy. The journey hadn't been linear or easy. Misunderstandings, sacrifices, and hard choices had marked every mile, but it had led to a profound awakening. The power of living openly, loving fiercely, and choosing truth over comfort. As they stood together watching the city lights from their new balcony months later, Ethan reflected on that single bold entrance at the reunion and how it had rippled outward, transforming not just one night, but an entire life. Family bonds had mended in unexpected ways, society at work had shifted through quiet advocacy, and their love had deepened into something unbreakable. The man who once hid in shadows now walked in light, grateful for every step, every tear, every triumph. True or false? One moment of courage in the face of ridicule can truly spark lasting change and acceptance in family, work, and self.